Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To some of you, and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. Again, it hasn't really slipped past me that when Neely Fuller passed away, mainstream news wouldn't talk about it. And I came to understand part of why it is that they won't discuss his passing. Now, I wasn't sure if it was or not being discussed in mainstream news when it was first the case. I mean, I had to find out through the Black Manosphere. And then again through Facebook, both my personal account with my name on it, and then, or rather my old name, and then my Jet Black Facebook account. I can't remember which one I saw it on first, but it was on Facebook that I saw it. And then the Black Manosphere. As a Muslim, we mourn the lives and the losses slightly differently, actually noticeably differently from how everybody else does. And it's not personal. That's the rules. We are to not engage in frivolous praise, and we are to not engage in frivolous criticism. We have to take that balanced road. We remember them, and we try to take good influences from them. This is how we run that. We don't use rest in peace, and we don't say the same things for Muslims who pass away as Muslim as what we say for those who have passed away while they were not. So when you don't hear me say rest in peace, rest in power, rest in paradise, it's nothing personal. It's just the rules. The legacy of Neely Fuller is bigger than what maybe even he knows. A non-academic whose experience in the military fighting for massa managed to influence an academic, Francis Cress Welsing. Now, he recommended going, and in order to qualify for marriage, he recommended 10 months without bumping and grinding. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. I would recommend vetting, but my process of vetting is different. Francis Cress Welsing pretty much recommended not only no fornication, but no marriage until you're in your 30s. I'm not going to recommend that either. Because at that point, you got people who have been sexually aware for 15 years, at least 15, but no marriage and no fornication. Well, you know, that's what happened with Europeans. We already know what the case was with them. That's like a vow of celibacy almost. And that doesn't lead to anything healthy when it comes to Europeans. Have we generally handled not bumping and grinding better than other people? We probably have, but I wouldn't tell us to go that route either. So to make a long story short, let me go ahead and explain to you that what Neely Fuller was talking about was fighting white supremacy as a worldwide false religion with a false god in the form of an idol. Whiteness being the god, the false god, and white supremacy being the false religion. And whites and their wishes being the idols. Walking, living, breathing idols. As well as the images that they would have in their picture books. On top of all of that. So these would be the false gods and the idols and their religion and what they believe is sacred. As a result, let me just go ahead and tell you guys, man, what Neely Fuller was talking about was a code of conduct that we would all have that will make us no longer dependent upon leaders. And that was right. That was smart. That was sharp. Because leadership allows them a focal point. And as a matter of fact, they don't like it when you have effective leadership. But as long as you have leadership and they have power over you, they have a focal point. If they hit that target, then they scatter the rest of us. First, it happened with Malcolm, Malik Al-Hajj al-Shabazz. Then it happened with MLK. And at that point, things were so scattered that they could simply use edutainment, if you will, to get the rest of them to scatter themselves. So then would wind up being the case. Well, make a long story short, you then had Huey P. Newton take himself out with narcotics. And you have COINTELPRO in the next phase, after these assassinations, when it was really solidified and named COINTELPRO, you now had COINTELPRO, which began to mean in so many words that if they won't start fights with each other because they see us as a common enemy, then what we'll do is we will turn around and we will forge letters and just lie and say that so-and-so said something that he did not actually say. And we'll forge his signature on it. And in that letter, there will be some insults and slander and unnecessary division between them and somebody else that is also our enemy. So we'll simply divide and conquer again, like we've always done. Neely Fuller came to understand that this was a religion because it affected people's religious sensibilities. And if you really want to know the truth of the matter, looking like I do, that's how the hell I came to see that. That's how the hell I came to understand something that is so necessary to understand, but it is also so basic, I wouldn't necessarily call it wisdom. However, the information is still helpful to you if you find out about it. And what is that information? Well, to make a long story short, that information is that at the end of the day, everybody of every other non-white group is under pressure, and they got to make a decision as to where they stand regarding your and my black asses. They all come under that pressure. We come under that pressure. Neely Fuller pretty much explained why it is that every time there's an argument between either two people within the same race of different complexions or an argument between two races of differing average complexions, it is always the same pattern. It is she or he who is darker that says race and color don't matter because they're not behaviors, they're not things you pick and choose. Those are involuntarily inherited DNA sequences. And it is the paler one that says, but there are differences. That's why it is that when we walk in a room, the same non-whites that will sit up and tell white folks that race doesn't matter and everybody's the same will turn around and see you walk into a room. And they'll say the same when they see me walk into the room after they know me. And they will turn around and say the same damn things that white folks said about them not being the same. You're different. Of course I'm different. I'm a different person. I'm supposed to be. No, you're different from the beginning. Your birth is different. You can't stop being different. Even if you change your personality, you can't stop being different. And quiet as it's kept, accent does play a role in it. What I mean is second language accents. I'm referring to those. That plays a role in it on a conscious and subconscious level. Nonetheless, we're mainly talking about color here. That's secondary, but I'm still pointing it out because what I'm saying to you is that I'm not going to ignore the other biases that people have and be stupid. That's not going to benefit you either if I were to do it. And I told you to do it and then you listened to me. That's bad advice. But Neely Fuller, thankfully, pointed out to us why these patterns that you see are present, why they are there. And so I'm pointing out to you why these patterns that you see are present, why they're there. Here you go in a nutshell. I'm glad that we had him while we had him. But I want you to understand the most important message underneath all of that. I don't think that he knew this, but I can tell you he was heavily influenced by Malcolm. When he understood that this is like, it's a religion because it governs the major areas of human activity. It governs that. Guess what else? He was looking for a code of conduct that would counteract that. And what I'm here to tell you is that I already told you what it is before I realized that Neely Fuller was saying all of this. I used to listen to the hip hop cartoons clips of Neely Fuller because he sounds exactly like a cousin of mine, who also sounds exactly like another cousin of mine that wound up being my neighbor. Yeah, I was his neighbor all through my childhood. And I didn't know that we were related. No, by the time I found out we were related, that was 2021. Yeah, so I was already on YouTube putting out these videos by that time I found that out. I was like, you know what I ain't gonna do? I ain't finna tell him why. Well, because at that point he had descended into alcoholism. But I could listen to my deceased cousin. I could listen to my childhood neighbor. Or I could listen to Neely Fuller, and it was like listening to the same one, except Neely Fuller was spitting that wisdom. But I didn't hear everything that Neely Fuller said. Therefore, I did not realize at that time, until after his passing, actually, when someone summarized what it was that he was saying, that Neely Fuller was telling us to have a religious code of conduct, and there already exists one. It was already revealed. I don't think he realized what was revealed, and that's one of the reasons why it is that the information I want you to know has been kept from you so systematically. When I told you what the solution is, I wasn't telling you that to be dogmatic. I wasn't telling you that because I want all of you to be like me. I was telling you that because I want you to surpass me in it, because that's what's good for you. That's why I told you what the solution is. In other words, I subscribed to the solution at the time I did, because when I looked into it and investigated it for myself, I already saw, based on what I knew about my people and based on what I knew about other groups of people that are or are not Muslim, that this is a code of conduct that can counteract white supremacy and therefore does not call for central leadership in going against it. That's important. Why is that important? Because white supremacy does not need a central leader. You think if I went to one of the headquarters of the KKK and I took out one of their grand dragon wizards, the white supremacy comes to an end? They got different headquarters. I think they got one in Florida, another one in a little town in Louisiana called Denham Springs, because I've had to drive through there on the way to Houston a lot of times when I was younger. So I know that place. Hell, I dated a chick from there for a little while when I was in high school. Probably the finest one I dated as a teenager. She was a pistol too. But and that's one of the reasons I started to say, you know what, no more long distances for me. Shuck, that fit. So in any case, that's what we had going on. We had, at the end of the day, the Ku Klux Klan with its headquarters in different areas. I think another one's in Michigan, if I'm not mistaken. They got different ones. Do you really think if I went to any one of them headquarters, or even if I went to a national headquarter and somehow managed to take out a national leader, that all of a sudden it's over? No more white supremacy, at least in the United States? No, it would be in the U.S. and in other parts of the world where it previously was before, because it has been implanted into the subconscious minds of non-white peoples just like it is in the subconscious minds and conscious minds of white folk. And here's where it gets even more interesting. I said it like that for a reason. Interesting. It's even in the minds of many Muslims, both black and non-black alike. White Muslims are the ones that tend to drop those ideas. They're the ones that tend to get rid of them. Honestly, you can take a look at the Features channel. I tell you to check out the Features all the time for a reason. Go look at the Features channel. Guess what, folks? He has several videos on there from about 2 or 3 long live stream interviews with a man named Abdullah the Luxi. The Luxi is short for Luxembourgy because he's from Luxembourg. Western European who accepted Islam, did a lot of historical research, and pretty much broke down white supremacy. For our benefit, the Features will tell you exactly what I'm saying. I said this before I knew that he had a channel, before he knew that Black Mind or Jet Black ever existed. Do you understand now why it is that Neely Fuller passed away and his death has not been covered in mainstream media, sometimes mainstream black media? No matter who owns it, white or black. BET ain't talking about that. What's the reason? Boy, that's because if you go down that rabbit hole, why did I say rabbit hole? If you go down that rabbit hole and then somehow you come across the Features on my channel, especially the Features, or Abdullah the Luxi, you start to understand, damn, the way that semi-black doesn't know he's black, or maybe even non-black Muslim who inherited Islam in a cultural form from his mom and dad who thought light skin was the greatest, is not actually encompassing of what the revolution of the revelation or the revelation of the ultimate revolution is for us. That's one of the meanings of there is no God but God, and Muhammad is his slave, servant, and messenger. Actually, I mistranslated that, and Muhammad is his slave and messenger. Peace be to him. There is no God but God means that that white man ain't God, and that white woman ain't no goddess. They're not even superhuman. As a matter of fact, they're not even a standard of normality. What they have that you don't is at somebody else's expense. They ain't the first people to have life like that. But right now, they are the current false gods based on that. Everybody other than them has to perform the labor to get done what they then turn around and call their accomplishments. F out of here with that sure bit. The meaning of there is no God but Allah also addresses that. That's why I told you it is the ultimate revelation of the ultimate revolution even before I had this channel. And when I said that, I'm not going to lie, I was nervous as hell saying that. It's the truth, but I was nervous as hell saying that. Now, do you understand why Jamil Al-Amin, i.e. H-Rap Brown, before formerly known as H-Rap Brown, ain't never getting out? I don't want him to stay behind bars forever, but with the evidence of his innocence, do you understand why they will keep him there locked up until he will be too sick to even speak? Do you get it now? Yeah, because he understood that. You don't believe me? Go read his last book, Revolution by the Book. And that first book he wrote called Die Nigga Die, and YouTube censors don't say a damn thing. I'm quoting the title of a book that he wrote. And the first book, Die Nigga Die, guess what happened? He was talking about something that is actually a part of our faith, which is loyalty and disavowal. Your loyalty must be to the Lord, to those who love him, and to that which is good according to his revelation. And your disloyalty, actually, your opposition. But at the very least, your innocence and your disaffect, your disconnection must be from that which is against it, perpendicular to it, just outright wrong. And you'll know what that is. And you're responsible for how much of that you do know. And right now, part of it is white supremacy. You have to be, if you want to merely not be guilty, you got to be innocent of white supremacy. Because that's the false god of the day. That's if you want to be innocent. If you want extra, you oppose it. I mean, at some point, you got to do it anyway, even if it's in your private life. You must oppose it. Skin bleach is worse than self-tanning lotion. That's why. Why do you think I've said, or I've praised men in Indonesia who tell their wives, you better not put that skin bleach on? I don't say anything to a man that holds out some self-tanning lotion or tanning lotion or even anything like that to his wife and says, here you go. When Richie Mack told Elle, when she realized that he actually liked dark skin, she laid out in the sun. What African woman you know that's light-skinned would turn around and do that? Whether she's diasporan, continental, or Melanese, which one? No, they ain't doing that. Absolutely not. They wouldn't do it for $1 million. I've heard them justify why it's okay to use skin bleach and put a damn wig on their head, even though the wig itself on their head is condemned in the Old Testament and in the Hadith. Ain't allowed to do it. You can tell your husband that you got one on. That's not allowed. And some are going to say, well, wait a minute, hold up, Jet Black. You talking all this, that's the solution. Oh, Naja Robinson's Muslim. Do you think she's following the rules? She tells all the business when it ain't true. And then when they ask her questions, well, I'm Muslim and it's against my religion to tell my business. No, she did it already. When it was true and when it was allowed, whatever the hell. I'm not leaving until I get my husband. She's trying to force a man that don't want to marry her after she did some white supremacist shit. Pardon my French. Shout out to BGS for making this plain. Well, or putting that on the video. Someone else made it plain, but I credit you, BGS, Elimu, which means teacher. That's a name that they gave him in Ghana. I credit you for helping me to find out that she catfished the man by pretending to be a blonde woman. She was appealing to the white supremacist sensibilities of another Muslim and their culture, which ain't Islam. It's deeper than just happening to prefer blonde women. Shit, if you took all the racism out of human history and politics, a blonde woman could be as cute or as ugly as any other woman. Could be. They got blondes in the Solomon Islands. Anywhere from cute to gorgeous to drop dead fine to booty ugly. Doesn't matter. And they're blonde naturally. They don't have to fake it or nothing. It looks strange to us, but to them, they've had that trait for 12,000 years. They've had that hair color amongst them for longer than Europeans have had blue eyes. Or the Africans who later became Europeans had blue eyes. That's only a 6,000-year-old trait in human DNA as far as they can pin back. Maybe 7. It's deeper than that. It's white supremacy. You think of Pakistan, where they probably didn't see no blondes unless they went into the remnants of Pakistan and Afghanistan, where you had some Greeks left over from when Alexander of Macedonia, mistakenly called Alexander the Great, went in to conquer. And it's probably very close to where he died because he wasn't going to make it. You got some there like that. Yeah, that's true. And a few remnants, a few pockets. And they still, to this day, they still try to marry each other to maintain white skin, blonde hair, blue eyes. Can you imagine that? As if it's in their, as if it's an instinct they have. and Pakistan, they don't see that outside of going to these remnants in Afghanistan if they choose to cross the border in the first mother cuss word place. Now, my question to you is, do you think that they have a thing for blonde hair because it's natural for them or because they learned it? And she went along with that to catfish him. They ain't gonna talk about, I ain't leaving until I get my husband. They're not doing that. Marriage is off. He never consummated it. That's why he's keeping a distance. He's not letting anybody even think for 1 second that he was ever alone with her to consummate the marriage, solidifying. He's gonna be like, no, I was never alone with her. If we consummated the marriage, there would have been witnesses to us screwing publicly, which is another crime in and of itself. Where the witnesses at? No, I ain't consummate no marriage. It's not solidified. You can cancel and annul it, and I'm doing that. So don't sit up and use a Nigel Robinson, oh Ninja Robinson, oh Nicka Robinson, with her ignorant behind, if she's sane to begin with, as some sort of standard by which to tell me that what I'm saying ain't true. No, come with some proof that that ain't true. Because I done sat up here and shown you how even when some of our revolutionaries were looking for the answer to white supremacy, they hinted at this without realizing it. When they tell you that it's for the, when the NOI said it's the religion of the black man, well, what they're saying is not the religion of the black man, but what they're saying their religion is actually, yeah, it's for us too. Neely Fuller was saying, you want to replace white supremacy with justice. What the hell do you think that message is? With justice. Yes, I want to replace it with justice. And right now, justice pretty much means some things that white folk can't tolerate, even if they mean well. The very minimum, it's going to mean a loss of several degrees of their standard of living. Having to live like their ancestors forced the rest of the world to live. Having to start over and rebuild and redevelop from their generation forward. That's the very least. And quiet as it's kept, you know, when I told you that really there ain't no candidate going to be black enough for us, even Barack, how you think Trump's going to be a black enough candidate, or Kamala? How you think I knew that? When Barack was running his first time, I knew he can't be a black enough candidate. He was running, first he was requesting power by vote, which is a popularity contest. That's the first thing right there. In the context of a nation founded on this false religion of white supremacy. And he, with his African self, wants to turn around and win that popularity contest so he can occupy the highest office in the land for 4 years at a time. He can't be black enough, win that election, get in office, do some things for us, and then remain alive. He knew that, stay alive. No. If he had done anything like that for us, he'd have been shot, and he knew it. And that's because it's a religion, and that religion is taken more seriously than anything to do with any importance he might have as a person. And he knows that. He understood that. He understands it now. He knew that when he was a senator. That's part of the game. So then when you get these choices between Biden or Trump, or between Kamala and Trump, you're looking to see, well, who's going to be the best for us? In the long term, neither one of them are going to be, because that goes against white supremacy. And you're still black. Wealthy or poor, you're still black. You're not going to be given a choice to just vote your way into a better situation closer to actual freedom. It's not going to happen. That's how I knew that if you are some sort of BMPT and you go somewhere with fornication as your goal to catch up with all them dinglings that Keisha back in the States was able to get while mocking you for the punani you can't get, you were going to pay for it. Just like she going to pay. And if God loves you at all, you're going to pay for that in this life. That's why I knew to say that. My wisdom is not my own, if you see any wisdom coming from me at all. And I thank God for it, but it ain't from me. I just thank the one from whom it has to come. He gave me the right parents for me to have any wisdom at all. He gave me the right teachers, both in school and otherwise. I'll never be able to repay him or thank him enough for that. I'm just trying to give it to my kids and give it to you. But understand what he was trying to do with what he did understand is what I'm now able to sit up and tell you in my stupidity, let alone at my best and most intelligent, is actually the solution for us. It is not in the cultures of the ones you're sick and tired of. It's not in their culture. That's not the revelation. They got pieces of it that are based on that, yeah. I just got through listening to a sermon because we're 8 hours ahead of y'all at the bare minimum right now. At the least, those of you in North America are 8 hours behind where I am right now. At the beginning on the East Coast. West Coast, y'all are 11. I don't even know how much it is in Hawaii, maybe 15, I get. Anyway, the point I'm making is that, hell, I think it's still Thursday in Hawaii now. But in any case, what I'm getting at is that I just got through listening to a sermon in which the man meant well. He was trying, but all he could talk about was fasting. And that's not an unimportant topic at certain times of the year. But these things serve a practical benefit too. There was nothing revolutionary on a personal or on a societal level about what he was talking about. Nothing. It's ritual. That's not wrong. It's just insufficient. And what happens is that the Muslim community you have access to see over here or over there is oftentimes missing this part. But the solution is there in it. You got to go and look for that. And that's not your fault. You got to look for it. But to find it, you do. I'm telling you it's there. I told you can start with the features. He studied for 9 years in Medina. He didn't flunk out. You got some of these African Americans and sometimes from the continent preaching in North America or anywhere else, and ain't nothing revolutionary about what they preaching. You can't even understand what they're talking about because they won't translate anything into the local language that's really important. They raise their voice, they sound entertaining, but you still can't come away with something you didn't know before. Well, what happened? Well, a lot of times, either they don't understand the issue or they flunked out. One of the most famous African-American Salafis, who's always preaching that whatever the most difficult ruling on a topic is, that's the right one. It has to be he's not saying it in those words, but that's where he always leads. You try to practice what he's on, he would drive you crazy. Yeah, he flunked out, failed his first year study because he couldn't learn Arabic well enough. Now, I would have failed too, but I didn't try to go into that program. And then I didn't fail and then turn around and go back to the States and try to preach to y'all with a transcript from the University of Medina showing that I failed. I ain't do that to you. I failed one graduate program in the first year, and that wasn't for academic reasons. There's too much going on that year. Legitimate excuses. Nonetheless, you know what? I didn't say, well, I had excuses for failing. Let me go and, preach to you about this particular topic, even though I failed in the study of it. No, I fucked the shuck up when it comes to that. Nope, that's not my field expertise. I failed. When I passed, I'll tell you about that which I passed. This guy didn't do that. I ain't gonna say his name. You start looking up the African Americans that are Salafis, or that say they're Salafis, that don't preach anything to do with black liberation, mental or otherwise, and you're going to find out who it is yourself. But Neely Fuller was hinting at this, I don't think he knew it. I don't think so, but what he said would tell you. You're going to replace white supremacy, not with another false god of any other racial supremacy per se, but with justice. And justice will already entail that we be on top so that nobody else can oppress us, because they've already shown that they won't treat us like equals if they're not forced to. Wow. If you are Muslim and you hear that, you know what the hell it is. I mean, if you're seriously studying Islam, anything to do with it, listening to those who studied or something. If I'm lying, go ask the features. He knows more than I do. That's the name of his channel. His name is Bilal, but his channel's name is The Features. Spelled Feachaz. You've seen me put links up to him before. You don't believe me? You can ask another guy who's on YouTube as a subscriber. He's one of my subscribers. He doesn't have his channel up, I don't think. The King of Wilcox Street. If I'm lying, he'll know I'm lying. He'll tell you. If I'm mistaken, he'll know I'm mistaken. And he'll tell you he's not an expert on Islam and Islamic rules, but he understands that part. If it's unfair, it's unfair. White supremacy is unfair. You can't justify that. And it has to be opposed. And many Muslims don't think that white supremacy is fair on their conscious minds. It's a subconscious thing, but they don't understand that it has to be opposed. Or they know it does, and they just ain't going to oppose it, because that means that they can't sit up here and now say the same thing about, well, you know, my preference for blonde women is just a personal preference. No, and then just not personal. You were brainwashed. Call it what the F it is. It's not personal. I had a Saudi guy one time tell me, we're not dumb enough to be brainwashed. And I was like, that's exactly the way that people brainwash you. Intelligent people are dumb enough to be brainwashed. That's why they call it brainwashing. You all don't think critically as a culture, which is true in the city in which I was living. It's not true for the big cities in Saudi. But I was like, you as a culture don't think critically and analytically, and you're going to tell me y'all can't be brainwashed? All it takes is for someone who does to come along and tell you something. Come on now. The most beautiful woman in the world to you is the one that looks like the colonizer. The one that caused y'all the most problems is the one whose woman you think is superior even to your own, and you niggas ain't brainwashed. Miss me with that. That same guy later on, while defending an African-American friend of mine against some of his own cousins that were subconsciously racist and biased, still turned around and unknowingly insulted us, because when my African-American friend said something about how Yusuf alayhi salam existed before there were any white people at all, and he must have been black, which may or may not have been true, this same Saudi who was defending this man from his own relatives said he couldn't have been black. And my friend said, how could he have not been? That's who was around at that time. He was there before Moses, alayhi salam. And this Saudi turned around and said, well, the Quran said he was the most handsome man in the world. That's how we know. Oh, so because he's black, he couldn't have been the most handsome man in the world. Or because he's the most handsome, he couldn't have been black, because black and handsome can't go together. I now know firsthand that these women here in Saudi, who are some of the best looking women in the world, they're cute. I now know that they see black men as being more handsome on average than they see their own. Now, they may still choose to marry their own, but the black man who looks like he could be a bodyguard, a little bit of time in the gym, especially with a low haircut or bald, is what they want. Now, they might not marry them because their families might have something to say about them marrying even one of their own race, but a different tribe. But that's what they want. I've seen it with my own two eyes and heard it with my own two ears. I've been in the car with the rapper B Deep. Shout out to you, brother. Dark Matter. Throughout eternity. I was in a car with him in Riyadh before I moved to the coast. And I remember this chick who obviously had a lip operation done. That's it's popular here amongst these women to get their lips done. Funny, right? I'm like, you don't have to get your lips done to be cute, but they'll do it. Don't want to be dark skinned to say they life, but to turn around and get their lips done. God have mercy. And wish they had a Kim Kardashian booty, which means an African booty naturally. Yeah, pulled up alongside him, looked over, saw him, rolled her window down to ask him a question. He rolled his window down to listen to a question. He ain't do nothing wrong. And her question was, are my lips beautiful? That's not an appropriate question to ask a stranger, especially in a country like this. And he said, look, all of it's beautiful. As long as you behave well, you good. And that's a polite way to say, look, yeah, you look good. If you behave well, you're going to be all right. She obviously wasn't married asking him a question like this. She better not have been. But he was, and he handled it nice and diplomatically. But I was there in the car. She just didn't realize I was there, because when I heard her voice speak, I leaned forward. And that's when I saw, and she saw me. Seen that happen. I talked to a colleague of mine, a Saudi lady, single, who was an English teacher. Her English was too jacked up for teaching. I mean, she was very understandable. And same thing with her understanding everything you say, but she had some mistakes in English that made her not fit to teach it yet. So I'm not saying she was a good English teacher, but she was one. You know what, though? She politely would try to get my attention or flirt. Now, I didn't mind being nice to her. I teach her a little bit of Spanish to help her out. That was my way of being nice, polite, friendly, but I ain't gonna flirt. I can't afford another wife. Now, what made her interested in me? She realized I'm black. Her English is so good, when she heard me talk, she knew that I'm black, even though she can't teach grammar. But meanwhile, the Saudi man who was willing to defend my African-American friend from Atlanta from his own relatives when they were wrong, still had that subconscious brainwashing. So what I'm telling you is that, in a nutshell, yeah, white supremacy is a religion. And it infiltrates the subconscious and religious minds, even of Muslims, if they're not careful. But what happens when you become Muslim and you're aware that that's wrong and you're not going to go for that stuff no more? Now what happens? Now you've got the ultimate revelation of the ultimate revolution, as outlined in Jamil Al-Amin's book, Revolution by the Book. And it dawned on me, it wasn't that long after he wrote that book that they went and got him for a shootout with police he didn't have, and put him behind bars for the rest of his life. And to make matters worse, they didn't even release that man during COVID. And to make matters worse, on top of all of that, it all started when he got pulled over in a car that he rightfully owned, but had at one time been stolen, then recovered, and they put him on charges of driving a stolen vehicle, ignoring all the evidence in their own records later on that the car was recovered, returned to the rightful owner, and exchanged hands from that point on through purchase and sale the legal way. A clerical error started all of this. That's because it was their excuse, not the actual reason. He understood it and was beginning to understand more and teach it more. Of course they're going to put him behind bars so he can't have contact with the outside world and tell you all what's up. That's why when he's too sick to speak anymore and can't write either, that's going to be when they might let him out, because it's going to be too expensive to actually give him the treatment he's entitled to under the Constitution, even though they're really denying him that as well. Oh yeah, this is dangerous. One of the reasons I had to leave the state was because I preached this on another channel, and you know what? I knew it was a matter of time before somebody popped me in my head or framed me for something I didn't do. It happened to some others that I even knew. I don't believe they were guilty to this day. And because it didn't happen to me yet, one of them doesn't trust me and thinks that I might be responsible for what happened to him. Thinks I may have spied on him. And I don't have a leg to stand on to say you're wrong for thinking that because, I mean, what does he know? He only knows what happened. He knows he got picked up even after he stepped off of what it was that though it was true, was irritating certain authorities. Even despite all of that. Despite all of that, he stepped off of that and they came and got him. And came and got someone else. And when they came out, they were broken. Neely Fuller was looking for something like that, though I don't think he realized exactly how much it was the solution. And he had to have been heavily influenced by Malcolm X. And for me to even find out the depth of what he was saying, he had to pass away. Then people started summarizing on videos what he was talking about. And I was like, wait a minute. He was talking about what I'm talking about. Yeah, let that be a lesson to us. Now, some would say, well, if he was getting that close, why didn't go and lock him up? Well, he got close. If he had found out the solution and made that leap and subscribed to it, he would have had a lot more opposition too, or he would have been kept from getting a big audience. There's that possibility too. That happens a lot. Sometimes they just try to limit your exposure so that they can save money, not doing all this other stuff. If that works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. That's why I tell you, my message is more important than the messenger, meaning me. Don't go say, I said it. Go and find out from other sources what the message is and spread that. Because what Neely Fuller was saying is, if we get this uniform code of conduct against white supremacy, leadership now does not become necessary for them to go and try to find a central target. They can't find a central target because if they pop one, the message still stands and still spreads. And it becomes a part of us, just like the dysfunction was made a part of what we call the culture for so damn long. Black manosphere is influenced by this notion. If we got to form a uniform code of conduct, then what they gonna do? Shoot the leader? That's the whole point. That's why I say, listen, don't be chasing fornication. That code of conduct is not going to help you. Don't go chasing wives on the terms that you have in the West either. Don't go chasing. What you do is go and learn how to live somewhere and then see if you can marry wives, at least 2 for most of you. In a functional context, from functional backgrounds themselves, from functional cultures, and ways that you can raise functional children who will then be fit to raise functional grandchildren. That's why I said what I said. If you just go and you just gonna pay for play, at least don't make that a part of the repertoire and start telling everybody you did it. At least don't do that or advocate for it. You don't have to go and condemn those who do, but you don't go and advocate for it because that's not what's going to help. I've been saying that for a reason. I know what I'm doing. You can't ask for God's help when you start going and not only doing exactly what he said not to do, but then trying to normalize it. How you going to ask his help? That's not even stable for you. You paying to play. Well, okay, well, the price goes up. Women that were otherwise on the fence and didn't think about selling box are now going to start saying because it's happening in Pattaya. Some women will do it anyway, I know, that's true. But there are going to be women that would have been on the fence and they said, well, you know what, I'm going to sell box now because A wife has to deal with what her husband makes. A woman that sells box gets to just sit back and make more. Literally, lay back, flat back, starfish, and make more. Goodness gracious. Now, if they're going to do that anyway, that's on them. Do you want to contribute to that and play a part in that? And if you say, well, I'm going to do it, then I'm going to marry later. Okay, you still contribute to that environment. You marry, you have kids, or you have them through paying to play, whether you know it or not. Either way, they're born into this environment. So now they're born into the same goddamn games into which you and I were born in the West. And you can't start off trying to find and start a stable family. You know, in the West, the more sexually responsible you are, yeah, God won't punish you for that. But, you know, the women will, the society will, the courts will, her family will, your father-in-law will, your brothers-in-law will. God won't, but they will. You want to contribute to this unknowingly elsewhere? Well, if you follow the uniform code of conduct that's been revealed to already go against white supremacy anyway, guess what? You don't contribute to that environment. If it happens somewhere else, you might be protected from it and your kids because you didn't contribute. And God just says, well, you know what? There are quite a few of y'all that I'm not going to let suffer the full effects of this because you didn't cause it, at the very least. Or he helps you leave for somewhere better where it's not like that. You got a high chance of that. It's not a guarantee, but you got a high chance of that if you follow those revealed rules than if you do saying, well, you know, I listen and I don't judge. No, we don't need the male equivalent of I listen and I don't judge. We may not hate. We may advise nicely, but no, we listen and we judge. I'm not even saying, it's like I said before, I'm not saying let's just police each other's penises. What I'm saying is, if you learn to police it yourself according to the code of conduct, God ain't going to punish you for it. That's what I'm getting at. They got somebody on Facebook that'll say the same thing, except he says it for the wrong reasons. He must, and that's why I go in on him every time. Every time he starts talking about male chastity, I dig into him because he's saying it for the wrong reason. Every time you talk about what the women are doing and the environment that they maintain, he wants to say, well, you know, if men, hey, why don't you close your mouth? Because what you want to do is let the women off the hook. I done already said that the problem with men is that they're too easy. You send me a voice note saying, yeah, but you know, most men aren't just going to start being sexually difficult. Okay, you said that. I said you could do it anyway. I said men can be that way. Now, when I start talking about how the ladies are punishing chaste men, you want to sit up and point at unchaste men as the reason they do it. Goddamn, dude. I know, I'm preaching. It's time for me to get ready to go. My wife's visiting. I'm not going to neglect her. She's getting ready, but she's probably ready right now. Like, where is my boyfriend at this point? So I'm done. I preached enough, but yeah. The passing of Neely Fuller made me aware of what the hell he was trying to get at. What he was trying to get at. If he had gotten close enough to see what it was and subscribed, I get these phone calls. I'm fucking tired of it. You know what? Look, gentlemen, time for me to go. I swear I wouldn't get. Y'all get it. Y'all get the idea. So, black heart, black mind, blackout, assalamu alaikum, black heterosexual, non-select male power, because they don't like it, black patriarchy till extinction of judgment day. Thank you for flying with us here on Jet Black Airways, where the phrase jet black's also a verb. Keep jetting black with us till the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender justice forever.